crossings and crossings of the legs. It's really good if you can be patient with that. So when the body wants to move, if you can just relax and recenter, you'll find the practice moving along. Your concentration will deepen and you'll feel the chi move in a softer way. So I know the impulse to uncross and to move around is really strong. And I don't care which way you do it, as long as you don't make too much noise doing it and disturbing others. But if you really want to move along in your practice, it said if you want to subdue the mind, first you have to subdue the legs. So this means you want to subdue thoughts and feelings. First you have to get a handle on the body. So the actual practice of sitting still and moving for 45 minutes or an hour is actually very important. And so unless you feel like you're going to die, and even then the ancients say go ahead and die, but if you feel like you're going to die during the practice, just calm your mind and just let your body be still again. Don't give in to the impulse to move left or right or uncross. And if you do that, you will actually find you're starting to get a handle on this. And this is like the real secret of practice is once you understand the basics, whether you make any advance or not in this practice depends completely on your application. I can't stress this enough. It's like however much you actually stay still and practice this, that's how much benefit will come. And however little you apply yourself, that's how little will come. There's nothing mysterious or esoteric about it at this point, once you have the basics. And it's kind of frustrating because it's like you'd like to hear there's some special dharma or some special trick. There isn't. It's just this steady, hard work and setting your mind to being unmoving during the time that you're practicing the sitting. The reason I stress this is because these texts, which are basically meditation masters, Chan masters, don't spend as much time in these instructions telling you how to do the practice. And one of the reasons they don't is because they taught in monastic and centers where the practice was going on all the time. So once you came in, just as you learn where the food is and you learn where the chopsticks are, the silverware, and the bathrooms, you are exposed constantly to sitting meditation practice. So you figure it out very quickly. Oh, that's how you sit. That's how long you sit. The teachers will say, well, sit unmoving and you get into a rhythm that's modeled by the community sitting together. So often at these monasteries, they'd work either on the mountainside during the day or in the hills, and then they would come back and have periods of 4, 5, 6, 7 hours of sitting. And once you got in that hall, there wasn't a lot needed to be said. It was very quiet. You looked around, you saw what everybody's doing, and it's pretty obvious. But what isn't obvious is this part of it, which is the inner aspects of the guidance for where you're going with your mind and the theory behind it. So that's why more is put onto this. Okay? So since we don't have a regular 24/7 kind of routine here, I mean, you all do go out and work, not in the hills or the mountains, but in, financial district, I suppose that's the hills and the mountains of the city. We don't come back, say, in the early part, quietly gather our energy and sit here well into the evening till 10 or 11 o'clock, and then wake up in the morning and start that again. Now, what I want to suggest to you, since you can't do that, and some of you can't take off to do an entire, what's called Chan Chi, 7 days of Chan, or they have 14 days or 21 days or 30 days, well, that would be 28 days, or then you have 3 months and sometimes a year of this practice. Try when you have time on the weekend. Now, everybody have time on the weekend? If you don't have, yeah, I know some of you have jobs that are nonstop, but on the weekend, try increasing your sitting practice. Get up a little earlier on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, sit for 45 minutes or an hour, get up, throw some water in your face, maybe make a little cup of tea, and walk around for 15 minutes, and then do another sit. Just do doubles. and the same thing in the evening. And you will find, if you do that, that second sit in the morning and in the afternoon or evening will really have a very charged effect on your practice. You will find your mind going still, things settling better, and your enjoyment, and I want to stress this, your enjoyment with the practice will deepen. It'll become better than football, soccer, fashion, shopping channel, whatever you do instead of that. So give it a try. If you can't do a long session, try doing doubles on the weekend. Okay, any questions on that? No, they have these things out there you can buy that have batteries in them, and then you can set the clock, and it has a little bell like this next to it, and so when the time's up, it automatically goes bing. So if you're watching your watch and not being mindful, you can get one of those. You don't really need it though. But if you like that sense of, I'm just going to lose myself in sitting until the bell rings, then go ahead. But if your mind is still counting time, then you're going to be sitting there and thinking, I wonder if those batteries are fully charged when I put them in there. Okay. So if there's no questions, let's move on tonight. Yeah, there we go. So we talked about, he says how difficult it is for some people to do this, for all people to do this, and even for the Buddha. If you read the Buddha's biographical information, you see that the Buddha developed, the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha of this era, developed these skills not just in one lifetime or many lifetimes. So now he comes to the next section that we talked about. He's going to go into how we could go wrong. Now the assumption up to this point is that we've seen through a lot of things. We resolved that uniting with our spiritual nature is really important, essential. We've set our minds on the way. To what degree? You know, maybe it's just once a week, or maybe it's more than that. Maybe you resolve to become a monk or a nun. Maybe you've resolved to change a lot of things to really focus on this part of your development. That being said, he said, be patient because it's not going to be fast. Pulling out the roots of this, when you really, if you don't pay attention to the roots of this, there's no problem. The weeds are there and it's just fine. You know, sometimes they're more dormant, sometimes they're luxuriating. It's only when you start to try to pull them out that the difficulty begins. But he said, even if that's the case, don't lose confidence in this method. It will work. It will work. Then he says, tonight, unless you're a person of immense strength, you can't do it, but let's assume we're all of immense strength, and we're going to do it. Okay. In general, in this Dharma, age of Dharma decline, there's a class, I went over this. This is an expression that has to do with, some Buddhists understand that the Dharma goes through periods of flourishing, of mediocre representation, and then almost seeming to be gone from the world and then comes back again. But in the Chan tradition, in the tradition of my teacher, this is not really what's going on. The Dharma's in flourishing, the Dharma's in decline, or the Dharma's gone because of what you're doing or not doing. So don't get hung up on that expression, the Dharma ending age. It's sometimes called the Dharma image age, and the Zheng Fa, the Dharma proper age. All this means is when you're really sincere, it's the Dharma proper age. When you're kind of mediocre about it, like, oh yeah, I got to get to the temple this weekend. Then it's the Dharma image age, and but you say, I don't have to go sit. I'll just put Guanyin on the dashboard of my car, and everything will be cool, right? Or wear my mala. And the more image you get, the bigger the mala. You know. So I see hipsters wearing the mala now. I see Lady Gaga wears a mala. You know, everybody's wearing a mala. That's the Dharma image age. And the Dharma decline age, all you think about is money. That's it. It's not an age that's fixed in time, it's a state of mind. Many cultivate, but few gain real insight. Why? And now he's going to go into why, even if you cultivate, you don't penetrate and get insight. Most people waste their effort than actually benefit from their practice. Why is this? Are we following? Okay. It's because they don't know where and how to apply their effort directly and unwaveringly. So, he's going to go into two things now. But what he's stressing here is directly means focusing on the right space, the right place. When you cultivate, you can focus your attention on many different places, but he's saying you have to focus it directly on the right place. What is the right place? Well, you've seen the text before, and those who are in the Thursday night group knows where this is going. There's only one place to focus your attention. Not the mind, my mind. Right. One's mind, the organ that generates all the thoughts, the feelings, the impulses that lead to the words and to the actions that create our karma, which creates the whole patterns of our lives. This is all driven, when they sometimes say the king on the throne is the mind. So you go right to the source. You don't piddle around with the branches. Confucius has a saying that, in the practice of cultivation, you go to the root. If you take care of the root, the branches will naturally respond. However, if you just pay attention to the branches, you'll never really change anything. You have to go to the root. So a cultivator knows that attending to the root takes care of the branches. Confucius says if you attend to what's here, close at hand, you will have some handle on what's far and distant. But if you attend to what's always far and distant, on the fringe of your existence, not at the core of your being, then you'll never have a handle on it. You'll always feel like you're being swept and carried along by a current. So they're all saying, return the root, illumine within. Return the light, illumine within. Go back to the root, return to the source. This is the language that's used. And that's referring not to some source divine out there, but to the very heart of your being, the very Xin, the mind. Okay? So this is where he's saying focus directly on that. Don't get caught up in seeking it outside. Now this is what Han Shan teaches, Xu Yun teaches. All the great teachers are teaching the same thing. All beings have the Buddha nature. All can become Buddha only because the mind is confused, which leads to grasping and attaching. They don't realize that. No other problem other than that. So the solution for realizing that innate potential is attending to that mind, attending to the here and now. Okay? That's the first part. Unwaveringly means once you find that spot, then you stick to it. Now, it's just like tonight everybody was sitting still, and I know you all took your meditation topic, and you chained that monkey to the post, and the monkey did not run away. You were unwavering. The sounds from the field across there, what sounds you said? I heard nothing. Even when you hit the bell, someone had to nudge me to tell me it was time to uncross my legs. I didn't think of tomorrow. I didn't think of yesterday. I didn't think how the pennant race is going. I'll stay light. I'm sure there's other places the monkey went. Unwaveringly means you come back and you bring it back again and again. Because when you focus directly, what happens? You get enlightened. Not what happens first? Mara, the snowstorm, the blizzard. Right, you focus directly and then it all starts. If you just leave your mind alone, it'll just wander and drift throughout the whole of your life. It's very happy, very easygoing. Like, it wants to do this, does that, wants to go here, goes there, no problem. You try to rein it in. Whoa, it's like taking a wild horse and trying to get a lasso on it. Do all of you know, maybe some class I'll do the famous ox herding woodcuts. Have you seen those? While you're playing around over there, do you think you can bring up some of the ox herding woodcuts? I mean, digitally? I don't mean carve them exactly. Yeah, see if you can find the ox herding woodcuts. They're really good. It describes in pictures what it's like when you say, I'm going to focus directly and unwaveringly. Did you ever try, okay, my father thought it was very funny. He gave me a basketball and told me he would give me a whole year's supply of popsicles if I could sit on the basketball in the lake. And I thought, no problem, because I could sit on. When you put the basketball in the water and then you try to sit on top of it, anybody try a similar thing? Or you get those cute little rafts that you see people floating on and drinking whatever, and then you try to get on that raft. Did you ever try to sit on a basketball or a beach ball in the water? What happens? You just keep flipping and flipping. It's seemingly impossible. How are we doing with the ox herding? Oh, I can't look. Somebody's got to give me a... Okay, can you roll down a little? So there's the first one. What's that ox there? Symbols, okay, we're not doing literal. This is not a rodeo. What's he doing? He's chasing the ox, right? What does he have? Yeah, he's got a little rope and a stick, right? This is called, I just made forth the resolve to meditate and get enlightened. And the ox is the mind. Okay, what's the next one? Can you go to the next one? Oh, I finally learned how to do it. I went to Friday night class, and I know you had to put a rope on the nose of the ox. And I'm doing that now. I'm sitting, and I've got a meditation topic. Looks really calm and subdued, yes? Not quite. What's the next one? I've been doing this now for a week, a month, a year. I just went to a meditation session. Now, if you went to a meditation session, you might get to this state. But if you're not unwavering, you go back to the previous ox thing, which is the ox is running around again. Some of you have had this experience. Great meditation session, really good. But then the next week, you're back to chasing the ox again. So if you don't chase it again, what happens to the next one? He's actually getting the ox to turn. This is the first step of the returning. Your mind is actually getting more supple. You've got the mind, a little bit of tension coming back. It's not as hard. Next one. I'm going very light on this. There's really beautiful commentaries to this. The ox is actually interested in drawing near. What's not there anymore? The rope. The rope. And so your technique is getting so good that you don't even need so many expedients anymore. With just a single thought, you can bring your mind back to center again. What's the next one? Oh. Aha. Mind and body, calm and subdued. Now the flute is what? It's a magic flute, and we have them for sale here, so if you want to... And it's not Mozart's magic flute, okay? This magic flute is what? Lots here if you think about it. No. What do you do? What's the sound? The flute. Well, first of all, it's the breathing. Sure, it represents the prana, exercise of breathing. But it's the subduing. Music hath quality that subdues the wild beast. So the music is samadhi. The music is the concentrated mind. Remember it says when you do the Chan breathing, it's like a bow that has no break in it, even. So now he can just sit there. He doesn't have to chase and just play, and the mind is actually supple and subdued. Next one. That's pretty cool, huh? Everything's okay. The ox is drinking from the pond. He's taking a little nap. This is called zudzai. Totally at ease. Everything zuran, natural. Next one. Same, but now they've gone to the cloud. So we're entering the dhyanas. Next one. That one I don't recognize. Is that the last one? There, well, you're missing some of the, this is an incomplete set. There's one where you have him sitting on the ox, riding and playing. This is my favorite. I got one in China. He's sitting on the ox. So you got wrong woodcuts, wrong Google. And he's sitting on the ox playing his flute, and the ox doesn't even have the rope on him. Not like he's even doing, he's just playing his flute, riding along. And then it has him returning to the marketplace, which is the Bodhisattva vow, now to come back into the world, riding the ox completely without the ox, at ease in the midst of things. So later I'll give a more complete thing on this with better ox shots. But you get the idea. It's a perfect, these are very old. They're both popular in Japan and China, depicting the difficulty and the stages of being direct and unwavering. But this is the unwavering part. The little boy is in a sense, the childlike pure nature. It's the Buddha nature, seeking to return and gather in its original mind. And so now they become, and the zero at the end is to show there's not even a mark anymore. Okay. So he says these two, direct and unwavering. Now we go back to the text. What are the mistakes that arise in this? He says, first of all, their understanding is exclusively dependent on the words they had previously, quote, seen and heard. In other words, what this is talking about is a literary intellectual apprehension. You read the books. You go to the bookstore, you go to Borders, wherever, and you just go through them and pick out these books on Chan and Zen and Buddhism, and you read them. But your understanding is exclusively dependent on this. Moreover, he says that you attempt to wrap their minds around the Dharma using intellect and emotions. That's the first part. In other words, they try to think that this is some philosophy, or like a riddle, or a koan is a riddle that's solved like a Sudoku puzzle. And they try to then use the mind's intellect, discursive reasoning, to get at this. That's the first mistake. Now, it doesn't mean that the text and the teachings aren't valuable and in ways absolutely essential. What are we doing? We're looking at text and teaching. The key is, although they're essential, they're not sufficient. They're necessary, but they're not sufficient by themselves. Anymore, the Avatamsaka says, to give you another example, it's like a master chef who is cooking in the kitchen, making fine delicacies, but he himself never eats and starves to death. Mere study is just this way. It's like someone swimming in a pure, clear, crystal water who's dying of thirst but never swallows any of the water. Mere study is just this way. And then they give a better example. It's like a deaf musician playing an arhu. They don't say arhu, it's a lute, but say arhu. Who sees the music, does the notes, but he himself or she doesn't hear the sounds. How does that music sound? I don't know. Mere study is just this way. These are all analogies from the Avatamsaka Sutra. So what he's saying here is, although it's necessary, it's not enough. You still have to do what? You have to actually internalize it. You have to embody. You have to actually put it into practice. The words, the teachings are merely maps to take you from one place to another. Collecting the maps is useless. You can have the finest collection of these maps. You can have 16 versions of this map, hand-drawn and gilded in gold or written out in blood. But it doesn't mean anything unless you use them to move from one place to another. Hence the raft, right? Remember the parable of the raft we went for earlier? Collecting a raft, or collecting a series of rafts, or having a raft collection, like a library of famous wisdom teachings. We got hooked when we were students. You remember the salesman who came around and sold the collection of all the classics with hardcover and gilded, and you'd pay $30 a month, and then you get a new book all the time. Most of them, all of them, I think, never got read. Then you move and put them in boxes, and you take, because you don't want to sell them, and you take them to the next place, and you put your classics up on the shelf again. And this goes, and you can have these for 30 or 40 years, and nobody's ever read them. Plato, Aristotle, Kant, Nietzsche, it's all there. Looks great. If you have an interview, you sit in front of your books. Right? Then you pass them on to your kids, who don't dare get rid of them because they're mom or dad's or grandma and grandpa's, and so they go another generation. Totally unread. They could actually have blank pages, and nobody would know. So his point here is, if you do that, it's koto-chan. What's koto-chan? Literally, head, mouth, zen. My teacher used to, I don't know what the Chinese, I'll try the Chinese. Please correct my Chinese because I don't remember. I just remember hearing it in my ears. He would say, you can speak wonderfully, you can speak well. If you don't cultivate, it's not the way. And then I heard it's something like, 说得好,说得妙,没有修行,没有道, something like that. Or was it 不是修行,不是道? I don't know. Anybody know that one, that line? 没有修行,没有道. 没有修行, 修行. Right. So if you don't cultivate, there's no Tao, there's no way. The way is still in the book. And that's why in the book when you read it, and it gets very esoteric and mystical, and so you get really tricky how you explain this. And when you really can't explain it, then you do something like, those who understand don't explain. Those who explain don't understand. And then someone goes away, whoa, man, he's really cool. Well, the reason you can't get it intellectually is because it's not meant to be gotten intellectually. It's not a concept. It's a guide to self-liberation. It's like a medicine. So the medicine is only good if you take it. And when you take it, it's gone. In the same way, you use language to get at something, and when you get it, the language is gone. Remember the famous passage from the Zhuangzi? Zhuangzi says, you use a fish net to trap the fish or catch the fish. Once you get the fish, you can throw the net away. What's the next one? Some of you have read these classics. I hope they're not just sitting on your shelves at home. You use a snare to catch the rabbit. Once you catch the rabbit, you can throw away the snare. You use words and language to get meanings. Once you get meanings, you can throw away the words and language. Then he says, where is there someone who understands my meaning so we can sit down and have a conversation without words? This is a famous passage from the Zhuangzi. He's talking about the same thing. In this tradition, the philosophy is praxis. It's meant to be practiced and lead you to a place where you now have the understanding and the words are no longer necessary. You're a person of the way with no mind. You've gone beyond words and language. There's a very different approach here to words and language. Words and language here are catalytic. They're not ends in themselves. Real erudition is embodiment. It's not just being able to repeat these things. So that's the first mistake, he says, is to expressively get into that. The next one, and this is more interesting, they maybe don't get caught up in words and language. They realize that it's an emotional transformation, that they want to be zuzai. They want to be calm and patient and kind and compassionate. They want to get rid of the dust, the klesha of anger and jealousy and greed and so forth. And so they repress it. They repress it. They suppress their da wangshang, the false thinking. The misuse of the mind is then clamped down and pushed away. And this leads to Buddhahood. Yeah, the Buddha got to be enlightened by suppressing all of his emotions and feelings. Look at the statue. Well, there's kind of a smile there, but that's fake. Because he did, that's what it looks like when you suppress it. And then somebody said, hey man, you're looking really uptight. You're supposed to be a Buddha. Oh, And then came the slight smile. No, you can't get there by suppressing it. Why? What was it again? You'll end up in therapy, which is not how the Buddha got enlightened either. Moreover, it doesn't go away. Suppressing doesn't make it go away. It doesn't transform it. It just pushes it down. And then you push a little more down. And you push a little more down. And pretty soon your can is about full. And then what happens? Explodes, right? At the person who deserves to be exploded at. Right? Who said, what's up? You don't look happy. I'm very happy. I'm meditating. It's like, why are you getting angry? Because you're messing up my life, blah, 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 blah. That's how suppression works. It explodes, or unfortunately, it comes in what we call psychosomatic manifestation. You start to get sick. a lot of illness is caused by the suppression of emotions. So it manifests as hypertension, manifests as immune system imbalances, manifests as even strokes. Men are most prone to this who don't control anger and temper. There's a study out basically showing the degree to which you cannot get a control on your anger and temper proportionally arises your proclivities for strokes. And of course, MIs, myocardial infarctions, which is the old new word for heart attack. Okay? So what it's saying is, this doesn't lead to enlightenment, it actually leads to ill health and leads to psychological malformation. So I mean, this is at the heart of therapy in the psychotherapeutic tradition of the West, that much of what we manifest is the result of repression of feelings and emotions, not dealing with them, but repressing them. And then sometimes we transfer them. So a lot of family counseling has to do with people repressing emotions and passing them on to each other. Family values. And so the children pick up on the unfulfilled expectations and wants of the parents, and so on and so forth. And the kids can't take it out on anybody, so they kick the dog or the cat or kick the door, or they do damage, because they're transferring the aggression and frustration out to other things. A lot can be understood by this method. This is not Buddhism. So people get mistaken. If you see someone getting uptight and getting afflicted and obviously repressed, they aren't using the method correctly. This is what he's saying. This is really important to understand. So he says, and that's all of these are futile, like chasing shadows. Have any of you ever done that? The fun thing is when you get a little kitten. You've had a little kitten, and the kitten's there, and suddenly a shadow moves. And then the kitten pounces and goes after the shadow and thinks it has it when it puts its paw in the shadow. But then the wind blows and the shadow moves, and then it goes like there. And it's a lot of fun. But repressing or just getting caught in words and language is like chasing shadows, and here's our translation, walking up to the doorstep but then not passing through. So that we move on. They cram themselves, now he's going back to the first one. They cram themselves full of profound, mysterious, and esoteric teachings of the ancients, as if the words themselves were the true Dharma. They glom onto these insights and understanding as if they were their own. So not only do they take the teachings, but they start to spout. Maybe they get a channel on TV. Maybe they write a book, 10 Steps to Happy, Successful, Awakened Life and Money, too. Little did they know that none of this is of any use. Such reliance on others, on things outside like that, just blocks the door to their own awakening. So he says, as we now begin our practice, we have to first clear the ground of these other views and opinions and earnestly attend to this mind. No one liberates you but yourselves. No one can, no one may. You yourself must walk the path. Buddhas only show the way. So what he's saying here is that you have to then attend to this mind. Not the mind of Zhuangzi or Mencius or Confucius or the Buddha, but this mind. In other words, you walk the same path the Buddha walked, but it's your path. This is really, I remember I first came in and everybody had a practice that they were doing, and a lot of people were memorizing sutras. And the master asked somebody, well, what sutra are you reciting? And they said, oh, I'm reciting, the Vajra Sutra. So somebody else thought, oh, that's kind of beginning. The Lotus Sutra is better. So the master said, what are you I'm doing the Lotus Sutra. And somebody else thought, well, Lotus is pretty good with the Avatamsaka. That's the King of Kings. So I asked somebody, what are you reciting? The Avatamsaka of the King of Kings. And the master said, useless. Now, you have to understand context here. Don't go and say, oh, the master said reciting sutras is useless. People do this. What he meant was the mind with which you're coming at this recitation is useless. And they all said, well, which one should we recite then? And he said, recite the one you're reciting now. Get to memorize that sutra. Well, what do you mean, Master? Listen to your own mind. That's what you're reciting. That's the sutra that you're memorizing. I want to be number one. I want to be number one. I want to be number one. Swopa. That's your mantra. So he was saying the sutra of your mind as it moves, its daily movements, is actually what you're reciting and turning. You're not actually reciting if your mind is, oh, I want to be the number one reciter or memorizer or anything. So you understand the context now of how that was taught? He didn't say it was useless. He was simply saying if you do that, but don't actually use it to turn your mind, then you're not reciting a sutra. So he says, firmly believe that this mind is naturally pure, clear, lacks nothing, is replete and lucid. So the potential of the mind, this mind, has everything whole and complete. It embraces the Dharma realm. This is like the sixth patriarch saying, this mind is meant for greatness. It is meant to know all. The capacity of this mind has no limits or bounds. We constrict it, we limit it, but it itself naturally doesn't have these limits or bounds. Where fundamentally there's no separation between body, mind, and world. No inside, no outside, no self or others. Nor is there any deluded thinking or anxiety. And even this one thought does not arise. Okay? So if I pause here, go back in steps, he's saying, use words and language, use the teachings as guides, as medicine, as directional devices, and then put them into practice immediately. And then evaluate how you're doing. Go back and check your practice against the words and language, but don't simply think, even if you memorize the words and language, that you're cultivating. Then he says you have to also not repress and suppress. This is a little harder. This is a little harder, but in a sense, you feel it when you repress and suppress. You feel that it's not healthy. And yet, there's encouragement to do this because why? Why would it be encouragement to do repression? Well, others then have a favorable impression. If you're not blowing your emotions all over the place and you look really calm and collected, a lot of people will think you're kind of enlightened. No, really, it's not that hard to do. But it's not real. And so you're carrying it inside, and there's just like this furnace that's abuzz. So the real relaxation comes from letting go, but also from transforming that negativity into something else. So it's kind of nitty-gritty work, but repression doesn't work. So he's saying at that point, you really have to face these things, see through them, and put them down. That doesn't mean you just let the emotions just go flow out. But it does mean when you see them, you begin a process of bringing them back, bringing them under harness, but at the same time going to the roots of that and untying it so naturally they evaporate by themselves. There's a wonderful folk song that talks about, you can look at it both ways. The metaphor is grass and concrete. And so you can look at it as if you put concrete over grass to try to keep the grass down. The grass won't be kept. So it says, the song is, God bless the grass, it grows through the cracks. They pour the concrete over and try to keep it back, but the concrete gets tired of what it has to do. It breaks and it buckles and the grass grows through. Okay? So this is the image that repression on top of the grass only works for a certain amount of time, but then the grass comes, and it comes with a force now because it's been held. So it's actually stronger. Now you can look at this the other way and say that's Bodhi. So you were asking last week about the Bodhi seed and the... So the covering over of that Bodhi, the grass wants to grow through that. The Bodhi resolve wants to come through that concrete. and it will push. So you can use it both ways. But anyway, the concrete can't keep that powerful grasp back. That's the image to keep in mind. Okay, so he's saying if you do that, you can do that with confidence because now he's giving you hypotheses. Everything's okay. You are whole and replete, you lack nothing. Therefore, this can be successful. If there was a case that you lacked or didn't have whole and replete, then this wouldn't work. So this is the important hypotheses that get, and you could say you have to take this with faith at the beginning, and then see if in fact that's true. You can't just say, faith here is the end. I believe that I have the Buddha nature and I believe I can become a Buddha. It's actually a hypothetical statement that you then have to test out. But if you don't start with that confidence, then taking this on becomes very hard to use. Does it make sense? Okay. And then he says, ultimately, once the mind is liberated in this way, everything is whole and complete and returns. There's no delude or anxiety. And, more importantly, not even this one thought arises. You are so free and so in that original state that you're not saying, I'm in this state. That's how natural it is. So tonight, what I was going to do, I'm going to introduce another Han Shan. Now, this is not, what's that word for, not alter ego, is there another word for clone? This is not a clone of Han Shan. There's two Han Shans that are famous in Buddhism. This is one Han Shan. What does his name translate as? This Han Shan that we're reading. Yeah. It's a name, what's the translation for the Han? The Shan is mountain, right?
Yeah. This one's
Silly. This one's called Silly Mountain. Okay? The Han Shan I'm going to share with you tonight lived, let's see, he lived about 800 or 900 years before this Han Shan. And his name was called Han Shan, but it means Cold Mountain. Cold Mountain. And Cold Mountain Han Shan is a real character. Nobody knows much about him. Some people say that he ran away from an unsuccessful rebellion in China and ran into the mountains and lived there for the rest of his life. Some people say he just ran away from the stupidity of the ordinary world and went to the mountains. That was still in a China that you could go to the mountains and get away from things. But the mountains are being leveled daily as we speak. I'm thinking of another folk song. When we went to Datong in China to tour, and this was a place of the famous Datong caves, and so we were like, wow, we're going to go see the caves. A lot of those caves were in grottos and mountains and hillsides, and the only ones really left were the ones that had the carvings in. And they were black. Now, why were they black? No, you'd think incense smoke. But you have to remember, since the Cultural Revolution, not too many people were coming and lighting incense smoke there. Coal. This is the Appalachia of China. And so when we got there, we noticed if we had white robes, they were quickly turning black. You blow your nose, and it was just black, and there was coal everywhere. And the coal was getting into the caves now. And so the hills that had once there had been leveled to take coal out. And this is what basically is feeding the Chinese energy system. So only on the last minute did they preserve these grottos that you can go in and see these wonderful Buddha images carved inside the grottos of Datong. But, the coal is creeping in, and of course when it rains, the rain mixing with that coal dust makes it just inhabitable. So I'm thinking of another folk song. I'm sure it's not here. I don't sing the songs. He'll sing it. I'll just give you the words. The song is about a little boy talking to his father. He wants to go back to the county where he grew up because he remembers the streams and the woods. And he's saying, so, Daddy, won't you take me back to Muhlenberg County, down by the Green River where paradise lays? And the grandfather says, I'm sorry, my son, you're too late in asking. Mr. Peabody's coal train has hauled it away. And this is an early folk song of people expressing the loss of the natural environment to the coal. There has to be one in Chinese coming now. So if you want to make a hit for yourself, come up with an equivalent song for Datong. So he lived at this time in the northeastern mountains near what we now know as Tiantai Mountain. And that's where his name comes from, because he lived in these mountains. I guess people say it's Fujian province where this was. And this place was a place for many Taoist and Buddhist hermits to go to. It's the classic. You ever see these landscape paintings with these mountains? It's like yellow mountains, Huangshan, where the cloud and the mist plays, and the poetry. And his poetry comes out of here. We only have about 300 poems that are extant that he wrote. Some people say he would just get inspired and write them with his brush on the side of the rock or on a tree, and then just walk on. And if somebody happened to copy these down, we have the poems. Otherwise, many of them would have been lost. He was a real Berkeley kind of character in that you couldn't nail him down. He didn't seem to belong to any political party or any particular religion, although most of his themes are clearly Buddhist. He let his hair grow long. He probably did not bathe regularly or get his teeth straightened. And there's not much known about his life except the poetry you have. What's amazing is this stuff's written in 600 of the Common Era, and I'm going to share a couple with you tonight. You're going to say, wow, this is like, could have been written today. His language is so clear. He gives, what he does is he uses the natural world for his imagery. But the natural world for him are metaphors for the spiritual question and attainment, so that's why his poems become famous. Remember the translator I told you about last week who rode his bike down the steep hills, got married when he was 76, died at 76, that one? Arthur Whaley? I told you that last week, right? Yeah. Okay. So Whaley says of him, this is really good. He says, Han Shan, Cold Mountain, is often the name of a state of mind rather than a locality. It is on the conception as well as on that of the hidden treasure. In other words, the Buddha who is to be sought not somewhere outside, but at home in the heart, that his poems are based. So here you're getting Han Shan saying the same thing that Han Shan Ching is saying much later. So in a sense, he's a bodhisattva figure. Why is he a bodhisattva figure? Because he's compassionate. He is in the world but not of it. He is in the world and not of it. And so his poems are his teachings, not only teaching in his time, but still come down to us. You're still getting the bodhisattva. And what he's sharing is the joys, the struggles, the doubts, the calm, the elation and the despair sometimes, overall excitement of awakening in self-cultivation. That's what he's doing. So let's look at two of his poems. And the reason I chose these two poems because I think they hit on the two themes that we've had for the last two lectures. And these are numbered up to, I think, about 300. And there's various collections. So this is the most complete collection. Now, I'm going to read you the English translation. We're not going to translate together tonight. So some of you know the Chinese. If the English translation doesn't make it, then you can scream and object because it's not mine. If it were mine, you'd say, oh, that's so good. But I'm not going to tell you whose it says, but look at the Chinese and see as I read you the English translation. So he says, I declare to you followers of the way, you people who are walking the path, go forth and search. In vain do you labor your souls. Go forth and search for what? Foshin, the Buddha mind. Go forth and search for that. Don't spend your time. Remember Han Shan Ching's first line, how we labor endlessly. Remember Thoreau? We massive men spend lives of quiet desperation. Don't do it in vain. People inside have something vital and alive. There's no word to describe it. Moreover, there's neither sentence nor phrase. Matching tonight. The Buddha nature is whole and complete. It's something vital and alive inside. What did he call it last week? The fragrant seed. Remember that? The fragrant seed within that the good knowing advisor can trickle and bring out. Remember this passage last week? When you call it, it very distinctly responds. I love that. You call this and it will respond. This is your good knowing advisor within and it's always there. Yet it dwells hidden and it doesn't stay or remain. You can't just nail it down. But if you're quiet and calm, it's always there to access. I tell you again and again, carefully protect and preserve. Don't let it have blemish or stain. So he's saying, here's the real treasure. Take care of this. It's within, it's very subtle, but if you pay attention to it, it's the most powerful tool in your apparatus. If you neglect it, it seems like it's not there. And yet, bring your mind back and it's always there to respond. It's a beautiful, beautiful description. Now, this is 600 or 700 common era. This language is just so direct and straightforward. Okay, let's go to the other one. Number 289. Is that up there already? Whoa. Now this goes to the passage tonight. I've seen people reciting the scriptures. Their understanding relies on the words and comments of others. Whoa. There it is. Their mouths may move, now, but their hearts do not turn. What's the Chinese chair for turn? Duan. Right. So when they had scrolls, you rolled the scroll. So we could say, turn the pages. But he's saying you're turning the pages and the words are following, but your mind, your heart, is not actually turning. Internalized, like my teacher said, which one are you reciting? So this is beautiful. Their mouths may move, but their hearts do not. Hearts and mouth diametrically opposed. The mouth is saying it. It's just like, Nami tofu, Nami tofu, Nami tofu, Nami tofu. And what you're doing is not reciting. You're multitasking while you recite. So the mouth is reciting, the beads are going, and you're just false thinking. Just like ever. When the heart is sincere, is that Chung? Jen? So the person next to the words, is that? Ah, true, good. That's Hung Shu's sure. True, genuine. When you are true and right on, no phoniness, and you don't twist or bend, there's no guile, you're straightforward, then no production of various covers and bonds. Covers and bonds is his of klesha. That's what klesha is. The covers and the bonds, that which cover over the Buddha nature, that which stands between you and your own enlightenment. So when your heart's sincere, not twisting and bending, there's a secret mantra. What's the secret mantra? Keep your heart true and don't twist and bend. Don't move. Stay unwaveringly direct. That's the secret. So that's why he's saying this is the opposite of giving rise to klesha. You must simply in person examine yourself. Attend to this mind. Never look for others to take your place. Going back to the text tonight. In this way you can, inside, produce and attain the true boss, the true Lord, the true one who's in charge, the master. And this is knowledge that has no inside or out. Pretty cool. This mirrors a passage that I don't have up there, but I want to show you that this cuts across these traditions that all hold that the secret to the meaning and purpose of our existence is already whole and complete within us, and the only reason we don't realize it is because we cover it over, we're not genuine, we don't actually go in and tap it. We spend our lives drifting and wavering. Confucius and Mencius have a different way of expressing it. Now, tonight I won't do this passage. I'll do it another night because I really like it. It's called Nushan. I think does it get the tone right? Moo cow is what, third tone? Second tone? Yeah, so it's second tone? Yes. That's like Wisconsin. See, in Wisconsin, the cows moo in a second tone. You don't believe me. They go, mmm. That's second tone. New shot. Right? So it means cow mountain. It's Mencius' beautiful passage like Han Shan. He uses allegories to nature. And he says originally we're like this pure virgin wilderness, this mountain retreat that over time gets mowed and leveled because people come and ruin it, let their cattle graze and so forth. But then the wind and the night and the rain comes and it refreshes itself again. And then he says once more they come again, and they sell it to a corporation that turns it into a condo, and the place is gone. And you see this mountain, you think, my God, this is an ugly, hard scrabble place. And you'd make the mistake, says Mencius, of thinking it was always that way. But it wasn't. Just so, he says, in us, although we seemed wasted and hard scrabbled and lost ourselves and withered, that isn't our true nature, just as with the mountain. But then at the end of that, let me read you his closing for this. He says, therefore, Confucius says to us, hold it fast and it remains with you. Let it go and you lose it. Same meaning here. Hold fast. Hold fast this heart. Don't lose it. Let it go and it's lost to you. Its coming and going has no time or place. This knowledge has no inside or outside. See the previous line? It's that subtle. Call it and it's there, but if you don't call it, you can't find it. Truly, it is the mind of which this is said. This is from Mencius. And then, do I have the next lines? If rightly. So this is the line. So then Mencius says, so if rightly tended, no creature but thrives. But if neglected, every creature will waste away, pines away. So Confucius, then he gives another translation. So these are, the one part that's not there is the part that if rightly tended, no creature but thrives, neglected, it pines away. Hence you have the image of cultivation. If you cultivate and tend to it, it will nurture and it will thrive, just as with plants. But if you don't tend to it, it will waste away. But here they're saying it's this mind that you attend to. Now this precedes a famous passage from Mencius. He says, this mind, the whole point of education is to recover this mind. The whole point of learning is to recover this lost mind. 人心, the humane mind. This is what it's all about. Any school or learning system that does not help you recover that, no matter what else it gives you, is not a proper education. Then he says, but we lose this mind and we don't know to look for it. We don't even know it's lost. And we move on with the busyness of our lives, thinking we're getting something, doing something. But in fact, we're entering with a loss. We've lost this mind. And then he gives us the famous passage. He says, the ordinary farmer loses one of his pigs, and he'll go out with a lantern all night long, even though he's got 100 in the stalls, to find that one lost pig. He says, we lose our minds, and we don't even know to pick up the lantern. So this is Mencius' exhortation to come back to this, to do that return. And you see through Han Shan, both the Han Shans, the same theme running. So I share this with you. Next time we'll do a full with the ox herding pictures, and we'll do a full thing with New Shan. Well, the reason I say this is because this Nu is also the character for Om Mani Padme Om. Nan Mani Padme Nu. So there's another story about that. That's the mantra, Om Mani Padme Om. In Chinese, it's Nan Mani Padme Nu. But if you do it wrong, it sounds like you're reciting to a cow. So there's a great story about this, but I won't tell it tonight. Okay, so we'll stop here. Questions? Good. If you have time to think, you'll come up with not a real question. Announcements? Any announcements? Tomorrow night is the Avatamsika lecture. Session is coming up. Chinwei, when's the session? Loud. Nobody heard you.
Oh, I said October 28th.
October 28th is a Guanyin session.
To November 3rd. There's one in session. October 28th to November 3rd.
But if you do it right, it doesn't end. It just keeps going. Okay, we'll do the transference in English.